I don't know how many of you noticed this quote from the first page of Paul Collier's War, Guns, and Votes. I included it because I think it typified the ways in which it can be hard to clearly differentiate fields and the outcomes that they study and the explanations for their outcomes that they focus on. The underlined quote, War, Guns, and Votes is about power. This makes me it makes me want to scream, right? It made me think of The Scream by Munch, right? It is power is political scientists' thing. It is what we focus on, and that we think we focus on more than any other field in the social sciences, right? Economics focuses on supply and demand, economic production, capacity, development, lack of development, etc. Sociologists focus more on individuals' interactions, how societies evolve and function. Other fields as well, but power is our thing, right? And in the economics readings that we had last week, and in a bunch of other things that you will read in this class, because of its inherent interdisciplinary nature, there are a lot of overlaps between some of the readings and a lot of lack of knowledge about what's already been produced in a given field, and it is a common thing to have in the start of a lot of academic papers. You might come across the statement that there's a surprising lack of research on a particular topic. Given my experience, I have found there's pretty much been at least a kernel of research on pretty much anything that you can think of, which should be a good thing for your literature reviews or the research papers that you want to focus on. There should be a foundation for you to build upon. However, this foundation might not be in the journals that you're familiar with, authors that you're familiar with, and in subdisciplines that you're familiar with. And so while different fields butting in on political scientists' territory might be a little infuriating, it is something that I think I and a lot of social scientists have had to get used to. And I wanted to spend a little bit of time here highlighting how we gather knowledge in different fields, how we focus on it in political science, and how there's research on research that highlights how much we don't know about our assumptions when we conduct research, use different forms of thought about how we approach specific topics, and how we can deepen our knowledge by broadening the breadth of actors and authors that we think are relevant. Takeaway from this paper here is just the economists think that they're superior to the rest of social scientists. They think that they get better standardized test scores, at least in the US system, than other fields, that they are more rigorous and mathematically oriented. This article is from 2015, so sadly it's not as dated as you might think, but that it is a field that thinks of itself as the cutting edge for social science rigorous study. However, there's been a lot of evaluation within the last year in economics, at least in the popular press that I've come across, about how harsh it can be. In economics, when I was in grad school, we had a lot of political economy professors that would present research to economists as well as political scientists. Some grad students did as well. And the economics professors, just in my own limited experience, were much more intimidating and much more willing to interrupt. The norms were different in the field. People would ask questions about title slides or motivation slides before allowing an author to actually make their case before taking questions about it. And so there's been a lot of questioning about the assumptions in the field, what is missing, and what voices get heard and which don't. The graph here on the right from this article shows that there is definitely at least a gender problem. There's also in the U.S. system a lack of diversity in the people who get PhDs, not just male and female breakdown, but also other minority groups. So the people who do research, and this is definitely the same in political science, though I think there might have been a longer standing discussion about the need to broaden the voices in political science than might have been heard in economics. But there's a limited um, uh, number of outcomes, a number of voices that get heard, and a different number of fields that get cited. So you see here the number of uh, you're more likely to get quoted outside your own field if you're in finance or statistics or business than you're in political science. If you're an economist, you focus on specific topics and subfields and you look for other sources, though that is gradually starting to change. You see more economists citing political scientists, and you see more political scientists um, quoting economists. So there is, as you can see this more dramatically here, that economists down at the bottom are more likely to quote political scientists over time, and political scientists as of the 1980s are more likely to cite economics than sociology. So you show these different trends, and when you're looking for relevant literature, you might look at specific journals, specific search terms. You might end up looking at different types of subfields, but also there's a lot of insularity, not always, not in the conflict literature, definitely. And I think Sarah Mitchell in the conflict literature has done a lot of really good research in this article here, um, showing how there's different ways that people reference their own research as well as others' research, depending on who you are. That women are less likely to cite themselves than male authors are, and political science syllabi. There's been studies that found that there's a lot fewer women and minorities represented in the writings that they cover. I've tried to be as inclusive as I can in this syllabus. It's still a work in progress. I definitely encourage any students who come across articles that are relevant to the topics we're covering in this class that include authors that aren't the traditional white male political scientists that have dominated the conflict field for the last 2 or 3 decades. So it's definitely a recognition of the research on research, that research has its own problems with stated and unstated assumptions, the kind of questions that get asked that arise from those assumptions. This is gradually changing, but in this research on democracy and conflict, you can focus on certain topics and not have that complete picture because of the incomplete nature of it. The research that we're focusing on is an ongoing thing. It's a snapshot in time, but it is changing, it is incomplete, and that is why it's exciting to do this kind of research, and why I'm interested to see your voices and your questions and your topics that you're going to focus on in your literature reviews as well as for your final papers. So let's turn to those topics now as the last major part of today's talk.